how do you then balance, you know, the pursuit of bodybuilding, the pursuit of business, the pursuit of family life, you know, about to become a dad? There's a lot to obviously navigate there. Like we'll rewind, we'll come maybe to the dad thing in the future as well, but you've grown so much in the competing side of life and business. How have you done that in parallel?
You use the word balance. Did you?
I don't think so.
You didn't use the word balance?
How do you balance that?
I think you said, how do I balance
Not saying
it?
that you have a balance, but how do you juggle the two, I guess, would be a good
Also, the word juggle. So I used to, and anyone that goes back and watches my content or perhaps has watched it for quite some years would remember, is I used to talk about this concept of micro obsession, macro balance. Mm-hmm. And the way that I described this was, I used the analogy of a circus act, a plate spinner, right? So everyone has kind of seen this before, where it's like a clown in a circus, and he's got like this stick, and he's got a plate, and he spins it, and the plate's spinning, and then so he pulls out another stick, and he's got another plate spinning, and then 3, 4, 5, and he's got like 10 sticks, you know, holding them on his foot, on his arm, all over his body, spinning plates, right? And I was like, okay, if each one of those plates is a different area of your life, and the goal is to have them all spinning at the same time, we can only focus on one plate at one point in time, right? So you have to focus on just your health and fitness, or just your family, or just your business, or like whatever's important to you. Spin that plate, get it spinning, get enough momentum, cool. All right, sweet. Now then, let's go on to the next plate. And that focusing on each area of your life at a particular point in time was the micro obsession. And then zooming out and seeing all the plates spinning at the same point in time was the macro balance. Mm-hmm. And that served me very well in the early stages of my life and of my career in business and competing and everything really, until it didn't. And I think what happened was I got to a certain level where I could no longer micro obsess. And it was setting me up for, it's interesting because the way that so I work with a clinical psychologist. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like my breaking a mental sweat. And she's known about this analogy for many, many years. And I got to a point in my life where she started to go, you really need to start questioning the way that you're thinking about that, because it implies that eventually the plates are going to smash if you don't direct your attention to keeping them spinning. And she said, you're at a point in your life now where the plates are going to spin anyway. You don't need to go and be micro obsessed, right? The balance is there. She said, you need to start thinking about a different way of thinking about the way the different areas of your life tie in together, because this balance thing, this juggling thing, this spinning plates thing, it no longer serves you. It can't serve you. You've got too much going on. There's too many things that require obsession at the same point in time. It can't be one thing to the exclusion of everything else. Mm-hmm. And I think that was what I fell into, right? And I've been married before. I went through a divorce, a marriage breakdown. I've been through business failures. I've been through, you name a part of my life, I've failed, like crashed and burned, failed like big time in every area. And the problem is I was setting myself up with this micro obsession, macro balance thing to focus on one thing to the exclusion of everything else. So, which was great, because when I was micro obsessed with bodybuilding, well, it led to me becoming pro men's physique athlete. First one in South Australian history. It led to me going and creating history. The first Australian men's physique pro to do the Pittsburgh Pro, New York Pro. Fantastic. But what about the other areas of my life?
At what cost?
Yeah, right. When I was micro obsessed in business, fucking brilliant. I built the biggest supplement retailer in the state, one of the biggest in the country, from literally my fucking bedroom, like literally a room half the size of the room we're in at the moment was where I started. I had a fucking bookshelf like this. This bookshelf was my warehouse. That's where I had my subs, right? Started there, micro obsessed, built into this, fucking 8-figure business. Fantastic. But what about the other areas of my life, right? So the problem is the micro obsession was to the exclusion of everything else. So I had to break it down. That's why I don't use the word balance anymore, or juggling, or spinning plates, or anything. I talk about synchronous goals, and I talk about the different areas of my life interconnecting like gears, so that if I'm focused on any area, it's like the spinning plates have now come together, and they're all interconnected like gears in a gearbox. So if I'm focused on my bodybuilding, it's not to the exclusion of everything else. It actually enhances every other area of my life. So it makes me a better businessman. It makes me a better leader. It makes me a better husband. If I'm focused on business, it makes me a better athlete. It makes me a better husband, soon to be father. It's this change in mindset where it's like, no. Focusing and going all in on one thing at one point in time doesn't have to be at the exclusion of everything else. I need to start thinking about how I can get these things to work together so that every single micro obsession now actually assists the macro balance. Right? So everything is working together. I talk about synchronous goals is what I talk about. Synchronously, it all ties in together. Yeah. So that's how I think about it now. And I'm really like, I stay away from the word balance. I just don't use it anymore because it implies zero sum. It implies you're either in balance or out of balance. Yeah. It implies for something to be in balance, something else has to be out of balance. So it's one thing to the exclusion of the other, right? You talk about people who talk about things in absolutes. It's a very similar concept when you talk about balance, when you talk about juggling, when you talk about spinning plates. It's one thing to the exclusion of everything else. So I try and just, what we speak into existence is very powerful. So I just try not to speak that into existence anymore.
Yeah. Would you then say that like it's still important to have that layer of the ability to be in the micro is in the fact of the task that you're doing at said time? So it's not to like it's, for 30 minutes of the day, like it's being able to dedicate X time to this task so that I'm not distracted then as well is very different to you being like, I'm all in on bodybuilding only and maybe for, 6 months. And because once again, time is, when I think you've talked about this before as well, if we really zoomed out, most things are very micro, maybe pushing macro in the grand scheme of things. It's like, is that what you mean there as well? Like, it's not to say that when you're doing one task, you're fucking scatterbrained, obviously.
No, that's right. Yeah.
You have to be able to channel.
You have to be able to channel 100%, but it's not that you being focused on one thing has to be at the exclusion of everything else. When we talk about like, okay, we talk about productivity, for example, and in productivity, multitasking has been the culture for so long, and now we've gone in the other direction. It's about monotasking. It's about, okay, how can you just say yes to one thing at one point in time and say no to everything else, which is super important. And I talk about this when it comes to opportunity cost in business as well. But what I'm saying is from a setting it up in your mind, I think that trying to find some sort of magical balance across the different areas of your life is not a good way to think about it. And I'm not saying that, and this is what I talk about, Jordan, is like that served me very well in my life until it stopped serving me pretty well, right? And for some people at some point in their life, I still think that there's probably value in looking at things that way, especially if you're this sort of person where you just kind of dabble in all this shit. It's like, man, just fucking pick one thing and go all in. But as you develop the skills of doing that, the question then becomes, well, how can I be all in on everything at the same point in time? Because at some point, to get to the next level, you're going to have to. So it's okay. How do I get things to interconnect, to be synchronously connected rather than just focusing on one thing to the exclusion of everything else?
Yeah. Which I think is a good point there as well. You made that like it depends on also the time in your journey as well.
It does.
And because like I see this happen, there's so many times like, and you see guys who they fucking hustle, they work, they grind, they have that, I guess the Mamba mentality where they're just all in and they do push other things to the side and then they get to the other side of that and try and preach balance. It's like, hold on, motherfucker. You didn't have any form of like lifestyle outside of this obsession to become the world's greatest at whatever it is. Don't now flip it around and tell people that that's how you got there. It's not how you got there. But it's now that you've been on the other side of it, you can have the opinion to be like, at what cost? Is it worth it? All this sort of thing. And you can sit on that, I think, a little bit as well.
Head over to Jordan Checker Podcast to get the full exclusive experience.